Hey, thanks for stopping by Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. As always, make sure you're subscribed and checking out the bell icon down there so you get notifications, like, comment, and share. So this is going to be 2 days in a row where we're going to be having a conversation about Supreme Court cases. Here's why. These things are incredibly important. And just yesterday, today is June 24th, 2021. Just yesterday, June 23rd, 2021, the Supreme Court handed down a nearly unanimous decision uh, in the case of a young lady. She's now in college. She was a junior, I think, at the time in her high school. Um, but the Supreme Court ruled in her favor after years and years and years of fighting. So what's the background? So this young lady was upset with something that happened as part of her cheer team. And on her off-campus personal time away from the school, she tweeted out some vulgarities in response to rules that were being instituted in the cheer team. School became aware of this and they suspended her from the cheer team. Parents went to school, gave them the opportunity to retract their decision for punitive actions against their daughter. They refused. Parents and the daughter got together, approached federal courts, took school district to court and said, look, you don't get to do this. You're walking all over our First Amendment right to free speech, First Amendment right, liberties to free expression. And really, ultimately, what you see happening here too is also a member of the public expressing dissent towards rules and regulations that are directed at the public, at her in particular. She has a right to express dissent over those things. The school said no, tried to make it about all sorts of things. There's arguments that were made about it's disruptive, it's causes dissent in the school, it's rude. And like, first of all, the word that she used, I don't think any kid should be using in any setting, polite public setting or not. But, if you want to drop the F-bomb today, that's on you. I mean, I got people walking around in public with the F-bomb on their shirt. Okay, this happens predominantly at Walmart and county fairs, but let's be honest, it happens with it printed out. It's printed out on shirts. The other thing I want to point out too is that we're talking about a government school district here. We're not talking about some uptight private parochial school that has dress codes for their kids, and they're instituting some level of objective moral behavioral standards. We're talking about a government school, a government-run school. And we know, which, just be honest, we know that by and large, government-run schools are not imposing the same kind of moral behavioral ethical standards on their students as you would get in a parochial school or a secular private school. It's just the reality. So for them to get all bent out of shape and discipline this child for using the F-bomb and saying it was inappropriate and it was disruptive, I'm like, are they running around the halls of the school policing that language in the hallways between classes or in the lunchroom or in, out on the grounds as kids are leaving? I dare say it's probably not happening. So it was an excuse on the part of the public sector, the government, the school, the government here, this government entity, this government power. It was a power play on their part. They didn't want to hear dissent about their rules. And so they were punitive in what they did. That's all that was. It came down to stupid. I need a fly-proof studio. Actually, I need a studio is what I need. But anyway, that's all it was. They were cracking down on her because they were upset with her for speaking out. Now, we see this play out all over in the United States today. We have rules. We have rules. We have rules. We have rules. You can't do this. You can't do that. And they're not applied with equanimity, if you will. Ooh, no, let's use the woke word, equity. They're not applied with equity. They're just not. There is absolutely no equity in rule enforcement anymore or in policy enforcement anymore. Like some people get away with things and others don't. And the people who don't get away with things are normally the people who are rocking the boat when it comes to public opinion. That's just the way it is. Like you can go out. I think of somebody had painted, I think this was out in San Francisco, somebody had painted in the middle of a public street, had painted a large pride banner for Gay Pride Month in the middle of the street. Somebody else came by and burned rubber on this thing. I can't remember if it might have been down somewhere down south. I don't know if anybody in San Francisco burns rubber. That would probably be considered uncouth and too rednecky. But this person comes over, they burn rubber on this painted symbol in the middle of a public road, mind you, a public road, funded by the taxpayers' dollars. Private organization goes out and paints over it. Nobody says a word. In fact, they probably had permission from the city to paint on a public road their agenda. Somebody burns rubber on it. This person gets arrested and charged with felony crimes. Felony crimes, mind you. Why? What he'd do is burning rubber on a public road a felony? No, shouldn't be. Could it be considered reckless driving? Sure. I mean, when I was in high school, I got a warning for, peeling out in a parking lot late one night when I was hanging out with a buddy, and we peeled out, and I peeled out, not we. I was the only one driving, and I got pulled over and got warned, don't do it again. You're going to get a ticket for reckless driving. Reckless driving? Sure, maybe. Burning rubber? Felony? Why? Why is it a felony? It's a felony because there's an assumption that he did it because there's hatred in his heart. And so the felony comes in that it's probably a hate crime. And why is that? Because it goes against the narrative. And so we're seeing this play out all over the place. But what I want to do is I want to read to you a concurring opinion from Justice Samuel Alito, who was joined with Justice Gorsuch in this. And here's why this is really important. And then I might read the dissenting opinion from Justice Thomas. So Justice Alito with Justice Gorsuch joins concurring. And here's what Justice Alito says. I join the opinion of the court, but write separately to explain my understanding of the court's decision and the framework within which I think cases like this should be analyzed. This is the first case in which we have considered the constitutionality of a public school's attempt to regulate true off-premise student speech. And therefore, it is important that our opinion not be misunderstood. The court holds, and I agree, that the First Amendment permits public schools to regulate some student speech that does not occur on school premises during the regular school day. This authority is more limited than the authority that schools exercise with respect to on-premises speech. Courts should be skeptical about the constitutionality of the regulation of off-premises speech. The doctrine of in loco parentis rarely applies to off-premises speech. Public school students, like all other Americans, have the right to express unpopular ideas on public issues, even when those ideas are expressed in language that some find inappropriate or hurtful. Public schools have the duty to teach students that freedom of speech, including unpopular speech, is essential in our form of self-government. The Mahoney Area High School violated BL's, this is the plaintiff, First Amendment rights when it punished her for the messages she posted on her own time while away from school premises, and the judgment of the Third Circuit must therefore be affirmed. I also agree that it is not prudent for us to attempt at this time to set forth a broad, highly general First Amendment rule governing all off-premises speech. But in order to understand that the court has held, it is helpful to consider the framework within which efforts to regulate off-premises speech should be analyzed. I start with the threshold question. Why does the First Amendment ever allow the free speech rights of public school students to be restricted to a greater extent than the rights of other juveniles who do not attend a public school? As the court recognized in Tinker v. Des Moines, Independence Community School District 393, when a public school regulates student speech, it acts as an arm of the state in which it is located. Suppose that BL had been enrolled in a private school and did exactly what she did in this case, send out vulgar and derogatory messages that focused on her school's cheerleading squad. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania would have had no legal basis to punish her and almost certainly would not have even tried. So why should her status as a public school student give the Commonwealth any greater authority to punish her speech? Can you see what they're saying here? I'm not arguing that the school had to be pleased with this young lady's speech. That's not my argument. That's not the argument of the court. The court's not saying the school has to be pleased with the speech. What the court determined, and what Justice Alito so strongly insists on, is that it doesn't matter whether or not the school as a government entity is pleased with the speech. What matters is whether or not they have the authority to dictate to the student what they can and cannot say when they're not on the premises under the authority of the school, specifically for the reason, or let's call it the occupation of being educated. And they can't. They can't. And in no way, shape, or form was BL's actions, were they in any way, shape, or form able to be considered dangerous or an incitement to violence. And so this has really broad applications as far as the ability of the government, any government entity, to reach into the private personal lives of American citizens and say, your unpopular opinion is incredibly dangerous. We feel a need to regulate that, and we're just going to have to go ahead and criminalize you. It's like what we've been seeing with hate crime laws, and really this ties in very well. And I'm going to close here pretty quick. Speech is only free when you can say things that people don't like. Now, should people be out there expressing ethnic hatred for one another? Absolutely not. Should people be out there expressing any kind of bigotry? No, I oppose the expression of actual bigotry, a hatred. But certain aspects of that are protected. And remember, at one time, the ACLU defended the KKK in Skokie and defended their right to have a rally and a march. Not because they were right, but because they had the liberty to do it. That was the ACLU. It can't be considered liberty or the liberty of free speech or the right to free speech if you criticize people in public eye, especially people in government servants' roles, elected or appointed. It cannot be considered free speech if the unpopularity of what you said means you can be silenced for it. Ostensibly, what that means is you will have whatever opinion we tell you to have, and you will express only that opinion. And if you do not hold that opinion, then you cannot express that any other opinion. And this is happening over and over and over again, all over the United States, especially in the public sector. It just is. The case after case after case after case after case. And for me, I'm going to take it back to what I take it back to every time. It's because government servants, elected and appointed servants, are for the most part in it for themselves, and they do not like being challenged. And this young lady won a major victory. Do I agree with her? Should she be, tweeting out the F-bomb? No. Should, decorum. But this is a major victory. Major victory. Where does the authority of government entities start and where does it end? What can they tell you you can say and what can they tell you you can't say? Supreme Court has laid it out pretty clear. The massive restrictions are on government entities, not on private citizens. As always, until next time, don't worry about your safety. Fight for your liberties. Secure your rights. In Sic Semper, Tyrannus.